Hey there guys, Mike here again. Thanks for clicking this video. Welcome to my shop. In this video I'm going to try to make lantern burner screens. Something similar to this. Now if you're new to my channel, I like to collect and fix up old Coleman lanterns. I have a nice modest collection and these burner screens seem to be an issue sometimes, and I figured out a way to make my own. Now within this lantern here is the burner cap, and in the burner cap sits this burner screen. Now similar to a faucet, I have one right here. There's an aerator in here and it pretty much does the same thing. So an aerator helps dissipate the water coming out so it doesn't splash everywhere and kind of keep the flow calm. And within a lantern, it does the same thing. It helps aerate the fuel coming out, kind of makes it quiet, and helps disperse the fuel in the mantle a little bit better. Now, will your lantern work without a burner screen? Yeah, it will, but not too great, and will sound very loud, similar to like a blowtorch or propane torch or even a jet flying over a bed. If you're having issues with your lantern, please take a look if your burner screen's in there, and I'm going to show you how to make them and how to install them. So let's take a look at some burner screens here. This one is off a 200, and you can see it's kind of all corroded and crusted in here, and eventually that burner screen will fall out. Here's another one from, I believe this one's from a 242, and you can see that this has all corroded and the burner screen's fallen out. I picked up a 236, and lo and behold, somebody had made their own burner screen from scratch. Interesting that they drilled some holes in here, so we have to replace this burner screen with a decent one. And here is from a 220, and of course no burner screen. I do have a special tool here to take that off, and you can see that that's where the burner screen goes. So just make a small one for that. If you want any information about this tool, just leave a comment below and I can give you some more info. I custom make these to fit in those grooves just perfectly there. A lot of times people will just take some pliers, and you can see someone has marked all this up here. And of course, since I have a lathe, I'm able to make my own burner cap. So this is a new one that I just made, and this will fit a 242 or 200 just perfectly. But that is for another video. So let's talk about material here. When I first started getting into lanterns, I thought, I can make my own, no problem. I'll just buy some of this sink strainer stuff. It looks similar. Get some tin snips here, fold it out and cut it around circle. No, it doesn't work. So this stuff is no good. Don't bother with that. I even tried these strainers and these splash guards, and they don't work either. So then I went to Amazon and I found something that looked similar. You know, it said it's stainless steel, resistant to rust, all that kind of stuff. Well, no, it doesn't work either, and you can see how it flexes. So this stuff was obviously useless. I couldn't cut this out or punch that out as well. So I ended up having to go to a proper metal shop. This is high-end, high-quality stainless steel mesh, and when they do the mesh, what they do is they count how many lines per inch, and this one has 24 lines per inch, and it's very similar to what Coleman actually uses. And now you can see that I've done my fair share of making these burners and it works great, and I'll show you how I do this. So I quickly figured out if you want to make these, you have to create a punch set. So I went to the metal store and I picked up some steel. So this one is just normal steel. This one has a little bit of carbon. I do believe it was a 4140, so I'm going to try heat treating that to see how that works. So basically you create a female and a male punch. You screw this into the top of the Arbor Press, you clamp this down to the bottom, make it sure it's perfectly aligned, and you go ahead and you punch it out and it will give you this. This one here is a 220, and I went ahead and hardened this as well and see how the longevity of that lasts. So basically, if you're only doing a couple dozen, I think you could get away with just using normal steel. If push comes to shove, you could just put it back in the lathe and clean this up again, not a problem. When it comes to punches, there's actually quite a bit going on here. Now, I'm not a tool and die maker and I'm not a formally trained machinist, but I did kind of figure out what I needed to do to make it work. And I can tell you right now that in order for a punch to work properly, it needs to be either undercut or like a 2-degree taper when you machine it, so you can actually get these out. If you punch it, they'll get wedged in there. It'll be really hard to get out. So this has a little undercut there. You could do that, or you could do like a bevel in there, like a 2-degree taper. And for the bottom, it's perfectly flat. So this will allow me to keep on, if it gets dull, I can just put it back in the lathe and I can kind of machine some more off it so I can get some life out of this. As I mentioned, when I first started making my own burner screens, I was adapting and trying to figure out how to do it, and using tin snips. Realistically, the proper way to do it is punching them out. You could get yourself one of those hydraulic punches, but they're quite expensive. But an alternative is these things called an Arbor Press. This thing is pretty handy. It's gear driven and it has a ramrod that goes up and down, and we can create a punch that fits in this, and then we can punch out our own burner screens. This one here is a 2-ton. A little bit overkill for the application that we're using it for. You could easily get by with a 1-ton or even a 3/4-ton Arbor Press. This one is quite heavy. It's about 40 or 50 pounds. I don't use it often, but I'm glad I have it when I do pull it out to do these types of projects. So when I first got this Arbor Press, it wasn't set up very well from the factory. To make it work for what we're doing here in these punches, it needs a way more accuracy, and I'll show you how I adjusted all that stuff. So before we get into this, I'll show you what I had to do here to make it work. So in order to have perfect alignment, I needed a way to mount the die into this. So these normally don't come with a hole, so I had to drill and tap a 1/4x20 hole in there so I can properly align the one section of the punch. And to create the punches, you're going to need a lathe. I know a lot of you guys don't have a lathe, so I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of machining here. It's a pretty standard process. You only really need, of course, the material, the boring bar there, some tools to do some facing, and some big drill bits. It's a standard lathe process, nothing really too fancy other than the 2 pieces, the male and female, have to be quite precise, and they need to interlock smoothly with each other. So as I mentioned, when I got this from the factory, there was a lot of play in the rod here, and as you're moving it up and down, it deflects quite a bit. So you have to use these adjustment here to get a nice smooth action so there's no play at the bottom of the throw. So I'll show you how it works. Let's punch out some 242-200 screens. So we'll take the female end and we'll screw it into the top of the press here. Make sure it's nice and tight. We'll bring it down and marry that up. So that's all nice. And then we'll clamp this down to the workbench so it can't move anywhere, so it's perfectly aligned. So then we go up and we'll just do this at a time here. All there, and what I like to do is give it a good punch like that. Now you can see how that's a nice perfect hole there, and let's pull out the screen, and there you go. Try a 220 and show you how that works. It's pretty much the same process. We will bring this down till it marries up nicely. Clamp. Bring this down, and we'll do a quick like that, and there you go. There's a 220. So one more thing I like to do to finish off these 242-200 screens is we put a little arc in it. So what I did is I took a drill bit, a 7/8 drill bit, and we dished this out. And then I create another die, so it is to create that concave curve in there. And we go like that, and then I hit it with a hammer. And then we have the proper curve in there, and what makes it easy to pop this into this burner. So let's just go ahead and pop this in. Right, so there you go, it's all popped in. And if you want to be more secure, what to do is take a little hammer and you could actually kind of round over all that a bit to make it stay in there. So similar to this one, we could pop that in. Like that, and then we could take a little hammer and just bound over the edges to make it sit in there perfectly. Now when it comes to the 220s, it's fairly easy. Take my tool here and we'll undo the cap. We put the burner screen in there, and then we screw it down, and then you can see how it all sits there nicely. As I mentioned, if you're only going to do a couple dozen, you don't have to go any fancy with some carbon steel. I just went and got this normal steel, and I've done a couple dozen on this 242, and it seems to be holding up. All you have to do is face it a couple times. You can get some more mileage on it. If you want to go into heavy production, you probably want to get something with some 2 steel, 01, A2, or this one here is 4140. I ended up just kind of tempering it myself. So I was able to get it hot enough with 2 map torches. I quenched it in some oil, and then I tempered it for 2 hours at 350, 375 in my toaster oven, and it seemed to be working fine. I'm going to be building another one because I have a 236 here that needs a new burner screen, and a lot of the Coleman bigger lanterns also need this type of screen, so I'll be good with that. My local metal store made me buy a whole bunch, so apparently I have a lifetime supply of burner screens. So if you guys, hey, if you want some screens, let me know. I can give you some raw metal, or of course I could punch some out for you too as well. I do make some for some friends and fellow collectors. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.